Good evening and a warm welcome to the Rushcliff Borough Council meeting. I would like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. Any councillor who wishes to speak should raise their hand and your request will be noted. You will be asked to speak in turn by me and then you may turn on your microphone. Once you have finished speaking, would you please turn off your microphone? In respect of voting, when asked by me, councillors should raise their hand to indicate how they wish to vote. If a roll call is requested, councillors' names will be called out alphabetically by the monitoring officer. A councillor may raise a point of order or make a personal explanation at any time by raising their hand, and I will hear them immediately, and my ruling on the matter will be final. I would now like to move to the first item on the agenda and introduce my chaplain, the Reverend Dr. Jonathan Mole.
Yes, my name is Jonathan Mole and I'm a new vicar in Lady Bay, and I thank you for inviting me to speak for just a couple of minutes at the beginning of your meeting. From 2005 until September last year, I was working as a consultant anaesthetist in Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham. And as an anaesthetist, I had the great privilege of people entrusting their lives in my hands. And one of the things that anaesthetists do is to make people reversibly unconscious by disrupting the signals sent by the nerve cells, or neurons as they're called, around the crucial parts of the brain. And the reversible bit is the bit that's important. And that's what I took great delight in. I wish I could show you electron microscope pictures of neurons in your brain and my brain, and they're beautiful and fascinating and amazing. But I don't know whether you know that there are about 80 to 100 billion of these nerve cells in your brain. And each one of these 80 to 100 billion nerve cells has connections, 10,000 connections, which if you add it up, means that in our brains, there's about 1,000 trillion connections or synapses. So even if you don't feel so at the moment, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And our brains don't have fixed wiring, they are alive. The brain is changing in the connections that it makes all through time. So depending on what signal it sends or how often it sends it to the other neurons, it's changing in character and substance because of the signals it sends and because of the signals it receives. So perhaps it makes sense to be careful with what we feed our brains. And as you sit here, your neurons are firing away and reordering their very presence and their being because of the experiences of today. So maybe it's good to stop even before a meeting and ponder how each of us are more wonderfully made than we could imagine. And even those around us here and in our daily lives, even those we don't find so easy to love, they're also wonderfully made. And our brains don't just process logic and reason and create actions. They have a complex richness of emotions, of hopes, and even of praying and worries. If we'll ever stop long enough to actually engage with that inner life, we begin to find that there's something else is going on. And this process also is somehow mediated through our brains. So life is extraordinarily mysterious, particularly at significant times of our life, together and on our own in life. But we can't grasp or see the God who made us, whose knowledge of us is so intimate that he knows every neuron and every connection in each of our brains. But the Christian hope that we're celebrating at this time of year is that 2,000 years ago, surprisingly, scandalously, amazingly, God took on human flesh and walked around among us with a body and a brain like ours, and he made God known and accessible. So as you start this meeting, take a moment to wonder how fearfully and wonderfully all of us here are made, and consider this Jesus who has come among us. Thank you.
So, I'd now like to ask Mrs. Tambini to report any apologies, please. The monitoring officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Bingham, Councillor Bushman, Councillor Clark, Councillor Sims, Councillor Maureen Stockwood and Councillor John Stockwood.
Are there any declarations of interest? Oh, also Councillor Williams and Councillor Purdue-Horan. Sorry, I can't see you all. You're so far away.
Do you want to take Councillor Purdue-Horan first?
Councillor Purdue-Horan, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to declare an interest in the Bingham Improvement Board item and on pecuniary interest as a member of Bingham Town Council, and I won't take part in the item.
Thank you. And Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare an interest in item 13, the Bingham Improvement Board, as a member of Bingham Town Council, and also being named in the document as well, and that I'll be leaving the room to not participate in the item. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we come to item 3, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the council heard on the 30th of September 2021. So Councillor Robinson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there might be an amendment from Councillor Jones on the minutes. Should we do that now? Would you like to come down?
No, thank you. In the minutes of the last meeting, on the subject of the white paper and planning, there was a recorded vote, and I'm recorded as voting against, but I voted for, and thanks to Constitutional Services, they checked the record, and I was wrongly recorded. So I'd like that minute, please. Thank you, and thank you for letting me say that.
I'm happy to support that amendment and to move the minutes. If we've done that.
Just say council. So I should just sign them. Oh, we need to vote. That might be an idea. So with that amendment, Councillor Edivine, do you wish to second?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do wish to second them. I was beginning to wonder whether you'd forgotten or not.
No, there was some confusion. Not on. So, you don't wish to say anything further. So we'll vote on those minutes with that amendment for the correction on Councillor Jones's vote. So all in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. Well, it's been a little bit more of an active time for me since the last council meeting, starting with making pumpkins and on Halloween on a day that poured with rain in the morning and then cleared up. And then there was our Mistress Day. And so thank you to all those councillors who came along on the 11th of November and took part in that ceremony. And also for all those who on mine and the council's behalf laid wreaths in various churches and other places on the 14th of November on Remembrance Sunday. I've even had my portrait taken, not painting, just a photograph, as has Councillor Jeffries, because she missed out on that as well. So we both had our portraits done in November. And then there was the exciting Christmas lights switch on, which was last Saturday. And again, we thought that we might end up having to cancel, not because of the usual reason, because of COVID, but because it was incredibly windy. Luckily, the very, very heavy rain that started the day and the wind did die down a bit. And we had some wonderful low noise fireworks and absolutely fantastic event that was very well supported with lots of local businesses there. There are refreshments at the end of this evening provided by a group called Meet, Greet and Eat, who also provided the refreshments for the cakes, sweet refreshments after the civic service. And there is an event run by the same people which supports differently abled adults with work experience and confidence skills, and they meet in the youth centre in West Bridgford on a Friday morning. And they also take part in an exercise class in All Hallows Church Hall in Lady Bay on a Thursday evening, I believe. But anyway, they're having a social supermarket on Friday, the 17th of December from 12 midday to 2 p.m. So if you can come along and support that, that would be wonderful. There's also the Mayor's Christmas party, which some of you are attending on the 11th of December. And if you do have a raffle prize, please, or two, for the raffle for the charities, then please bring them along by Thursday the 9th, which is next Thursday of December. And it's also, of course, the Community Awards, if anyone's coming along to that, which is here on the 8th of December. And the last thing I'm going to mention is I'm wearing my orange flower from the Seroptimus Society, which is a organisation that works on behalf of women. So I took part in the day on the UN Day for the elimination against violence against women and girls. And I actually had a little ride on one of the lions in Market Square. You may have seen the picture. And I must say that lion has a very, very broad back. And I have only just recovered from how far my legs had to be apart on that. But anyway, that organisation continues painting Nottingham orange from that day to the 10th of December, which is UN Human Rights Day. So we'll go on to the leaders' announcements, please.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, the story about the lions has got me all. But how far your legs were apart, but there we go. First of all, could I, Madam Mayor, just welcome Councillor Price to the Chamber, which is your first council meeting. So welcome to the council. I'd also just like, on behalf of the council, to pass on our very best wishes to Councillor Clark, who's had an operation recently. I believe he's out now. Best wishes could be passed on behalf of the council, and wish him a very speedy recovery. I'd also, ladies and gentlemen, just like to acknowledge on a business front the IRP, the Independent Rail report that came out recently, and also reflecting the huge implications for Rushcliff. As you're aware, the hub is going to come into Parkway. This is something, in fact, my predecessor campaigned for in 2012. So we've actually come round full circle, and we'll now have HS2 coming into Rushcliff. So we're absolutely delighted. The investment it's going to bring and the implications for this borough is going to be substantial, along with obviously electrification of the main line, and obviously the movements now to the west of Nottingham to places like Birmingham, Manchester. The times are going to be cut considerably, and that is something businesses have been petitioning me about for many, many years. So we're absolutely delighted with those announcements by the government, which will amount to over £12 billion worth of investment in this region. I think that should be really, really welcomed. I'd also, Madam Mayor, just like to mention two major consultations at the moment. First is the water bridge over the Trent, which I think is still ongoing, the consultation at this moment in time, and ask at least members to have a look at, and certainly welcome your views on this. This is the crossing from the Collick side of the city over to Lady Bay. There is now a final sort of design of there, which is now open consultation. When it closes, it will then obviously become to planning, both the City Council and obviously at Rushcliff as well. We also have the consultation out now for the local development order for the power station. Obviously, it's huge in terms of, again, implications for this area with the power station, its potential there to create many thousands of jobs. The LDO is a planning tool which will shortcut that planning, but it's very important that people have their say and that members participate. I'd also just like to mention to members, because there has been some press recently about housing numbers and particularly the future housing numbers for Rushcliff. There is a forum called the JPAB. We're represented by Councillor Upton in there. Recent press there about threats to Rushcliff. This is to do with the fact that the city at the moment cannot fulfil their requirements. Now, as a council, we support the city in petitioning the government to get their numbers reduced. But I would like to stress to members our absolute priority is to protect the green belt of Rushcliff. We're calling on the city council to be more creative in what they do with their housing. But obviously, the most important thing is that Rushcliff is protected. And Councillor Upton is empowered to carry Rushcliff forward in those negotiations and make sure that we absolutely get the very, very best deal for Rushcliff. Lastly, I'd like to wish all members, the Mayor and all your families a very, very happy Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there are no announcements from the Chief Executive. In that case, I'll move on to item 7. I understand that Mr. Story is here to present a petition, and so I'm now asking him to do that. And you have 5 minutes to speak, Mr. Story.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Councillors. As you've just heard, my name's Ian Story and I'm the chair of the Upper Saxondale Residents Association. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak to you briefly in support of our petition for a community governance review. Maybe I can just start by saying a few words about Upper Saxondale itself. We're a community of some 326 houses situated off the A52 between Rushcliff-on-Trent and Bingham. We occupy the site of the former Saxondale Hospital, which was decommissioned about 35 years ago and then acquired by David Wilson Homes about 25 years ago. David Wilson Homes demolished some of the hospital buildings, converted other buildings into predominantly mews houses, and also built new houses, both detached and terraced and mews. The hospital sat in fairly extensive grounds. These were not all developed, and there remains an area of parkland and other amenity land. David Wilson Homes still owns some of this land, although it's subject to a Section 106 agreement with the council. Other land, including tennis courts and a village hall, was transferred by David Wilson Homes to the Residents Association for a nominal consideration. Relying on volunteers, the Residents Association has improved and stewarded the land and has created an orchard, fruit garden, and a nature trail. Turning to our petition, the local parish and ward boundaries were drawn some years ago before our community was developed. The existing parish and ward boundary runs through the middle of our community. At ward level, we are split between Rushcliff Ward and Crotwell Ward, and at parish level, we are split between Rushcliff-on-Trent Parish and Crotwell Butler Parish. We recently made a submission to the ward boundary review, suggesting that it was inappropriate for the ward boundary to divide our community and that the boundary should be moved so that Upper Saxondale is entirely within the Crotwell Ward. We're pleased to say that in their preliminary findings, it appears that the Boundary Commission accepted that view. Equally, it makes little sense to us to be split between the Rushcliff-on-Trent and Crotwell Butler parishes. Our solution proposed in the petition is the creation of a new parish of Upper Saxondale. The petition sets out our arguments in more detail, but essentially we see ourselves as separate and distinct from both Rushcliff and Crotwell Butler in a number of ways. We are geographically separate, with trunk roads and greenbelt fields between us and those other communities. Upper Saxondale has a very different sense of place from both Rushcliff and Crotwell Butler, and our residents have a strong sense of identity with and belonging to Upper Saxondale. Our petition needed to be signed by a minimum number of local electors, and I'm glad to say that we've easily met this target and more, and that there's very strong local support for our proposal to create the new parish of Upper Saxondale. As a residents association, were already harnessing local voluntary involvement and already very active in supporting the community in a number of respects, including managing the village hall that we own and maintaining the other land. We believe that this community involvement will facilitate a fairly seamless transition to a parish council, and we anticipate, for example, that the parish council will take over the assets that the Residents Association currently owns and will manage the village hall and the other land. So in conclusion, I commend this petition to you. I hope and trust that a community governance review will be initiated. And of course, I very much hope that the outcome of the review is indeed the creation of the parish of Upper Saxondale. Thank you again for allowing me to address you this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Story. There are no citizens' questions received. I have been asked as chair of this meeting to consider reducing the time for speeches on reports and motions for tonight's meeting from 10 minutes to 5 minutes for the mover of the report or motion and 3 minutes for the responders. The request has been made by group leaders to support completing the business on the agenda, and I'm happy to approve and support the request for this meeting. So we'll start, please, with item 9, the Local Government Boundary Commission for England draft proposals for Rushcliff. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Early this year, Rushcliff participated with the Boundary Commission to look at the wards and the member sort of ratios we have across the borough. And the recommendations came back despite the population increases of 20%, that's projected, that we would stay at 44 councillors. The second stage of the consultation and the work we did with the Boundary Commission then came in early this year. And it was summarised that, as I say, it would stay at 44 members, be 21 new wards, which is 4 fewer than the ones we've got at the moment, more multi-member wards, boundaries of most wards changing, with 3 staying the same, names of some wards changing, and 2 town parish councils which are affected. So we put that out for consultation. The feedback from members that's contained in there in Appendix 1. This was then discussed by group leaders to formulate a response to the Boundary Commission for that. As I say, I don't intend to read out all the sort of recommendations that we're actually putting back to them. So this is really, as I say, to respond to that Boundary Commission by the 13th of December. We're doing this report. The recommendation that's set out there on page 19, section 2, basically recommends that we approve this draft response as it gets put back to the Boundary Commission. This is a complex job. As I say, we are projecting a high growth rate population, obviously across a lot of wards. Communities change, obviously, and in terms of the whole framework of the borough. So this is really about reflecting that. And obviously, it's very important that we put this forward to the Boundary Commission. I'd also just like to say it was really a desktop job done by the Boundary Commission. It wasn't actually done on site because of the pandemic, etc. And we certainly hope that once we put this forward, they will actually come and get a better understanding, I think, for the actual wards and certainly the weight of feeling that we've actually put into these recommendations that will be accepted tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, just very briefly, I think we all recognise that it's important that the overall size and makeup of the council is periodically reviewed, particularly as many of our wards have experienced considerable growth, to ensure that the population of the borough is properly reflected in the democratic process. And as Councillor Robinson has said, we do understand why this was a largely desktop exercise, but nonetheless, this has meant that there are some important nuances in the way that the borough is derived, the way that the borough is set up, and the communities within it that are not reflected in this report fully. And it is, particularly in rural areas, very important that the different settlements and the communities and the way they interact with each other is properly reflected in the democratic process. There are some natural communities that are not properly reflected here, such as Tollerton and Lady Bay. And there are some issues, some wards such as East Bridgeford, for example, where the geographical extension proposed for that ward would mean that some members may be attending up to 15 parish council meetings a month, which is simply not desirable, and of course has all the associated costs in terms of travel time and environmental impact in doing so. In this country, politicians have always had very close connections to their local areas, be it parishes, wards, divisions, constituencies, and it's really important that people's sense of identity and belonging and the communities that they consider themselves to be a part of are properly reflected in the democratic process. So the opportunity to comment on the Boundary Commission's proposals is welcome, but we do draw out in our response that we think they need to come and visit the patch, have a look and consider some of the things they've suggested in more detail. So on that basis, I'd like to second the recommendation at paragraph 2 that we approve the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Labour Group would like to thank the Boundary Commission for all they've done and their seeming openness to suggestions so far. Thank you to all the councillors who've engaged in the process and also to the officers for all their work compiling it in a very clear and coherent way. The Labour Group would like to continue to make the broader point about the 3-member wards and how this can inhibit representation of our area, therefore allowing for lack of actual representation in the council chamber. And we will continue to make that argument for the maximum of 2-member wards, but we'll back this recommendation on the draft. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, the Liberal Democrat Group will be supporting the motion. It does reflect much of what's been said, and our only regret really is that the Boundary Commission still failed to respond to the council's wish to increase the numbers of councillors by 2, given the growth. And I hope that when there's a next review, that actual number is reflected in any recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps it's a reflection on getting older that Boundary Commission reviews seem to come round more and more often and more frequently. I don't know. Do recognise, of course, that the boundaries need to be changed and updated over the years. But as has been said, the initial draft reports doesn't really reflect the reality of the work that we have to do on the ground, reality of some of the communities, and possibly the timing of some of the developments that we're expecting to see come forward over the next few years. So happy to support this report. I know many of you will have put in responses of your own as well, and indeed many community groups in West Bridgeford and throughout the borough of a whole, and parish councils will have put forward their own views to the Boundary Commission as well. So yes, happy to support this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We support the recommendation.
Thank you. Could I see all in favour, please? Oh, sorry, did you? Yes, sorry, Councillor Gowland, I didn't see your hand up.
Sorry, just one really quick thing. On page 12 of the recommendation, it says there's a general consensus whilst multi-member wards work well in non-parish or suburban areas. I'm not sure, but it's certainly my consensus. 2-member wards maybe, but 3-member wards in the city is just as undemocratic as it would be anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. I believe Councillor Rex Walker wishes to speak too. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief. I shan't apologise for making a parochial comment on behalf of the communities I represent, but the Councillor Barley and I have worked closely with the parishes affected in the Barton and Fabis and Saw Valley proposed wards. That work's produced a clear consensus on a desired way forward, with an alternative suggestion being put forward to the Commission's draft recommendation. Our alternative is broadly in line with the current text of the Council's draft response, namely the retention of the existing Goatham ward boundaries, with a Sutton Bonington ward having Normanton and Stamford-on-Soars added to it. But the report talks about a single member ward for Goatham, which, if that maths followed through, would only be recommending 43 councillors. So in light of the fact that we have agreement between all the parishes affected. I hope the council's response could be redrafted slightly to reflect that and amend the wishes of those parishes involved.
Thank you. Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've submitted my own comments to the Boundary Commission. Bingham West, it's obviously sad for me to see that the proposal is to abolish my own ward along with Bingham East. And I was elected when it was first created in 2003. But I have to say that I can't object to the new proposals. Some of us in the chamber here will remember a late colleague, Councillor George Davidson, objecting to the Bingham North development and being very concerned about creating two communities. And I think I would suggest that if there was ever an attempt to join Bingham North with the rest of the established Bingham community, then certainly creating a Bingham North ward and a Bingham South ward is actually quite a logical attempt to do that. So I haven't objected to those proposals for Bingham. What I have put in a strong objection to is the creation of an enormous East Bridgeford ward, which Councillor Brennan has alluded to, and of course below the 52, the Aslopton and Cropwell ward. It's been well argued in the report response that multi-member wards are not entirely the best or optimum solution for wards in rural areas. And I suspect, actually, whilst I don't disagree with the creation of Upper Saxondale Parish, that seems to be, from my looking at that area, the issue: where do we place various parishes? Because I think there is a strong case, and I have tried to argue for retaining an amended Cranmer
30
ward.
seconds.
Okay, a Cranmer ward. We have a very historical parish and community there, a strong community, and I would like to see that saved. And I think we can do that in single member wards in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. I was so excited with all the time going on. Is there someone else that wishes to speak? Councillor Barney. Sorry.
Just very quickly, just to put on record that I support and endorse the comments of Councillor Walker. The residents of our communities have come up with a very sensible and pragmatic approach, and I think we have complete unanimous response from all of the parishes, and so I wholeheartedly endorse Councillor Walker's comments.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, your right of reply. I thought that was what you said earlier, but then there were a lot of people who wanted to speak, so I didn't know whether you wanted to reply to them. So, all in favour again, please. That appears to be unanimous. Yes. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. We move on. So that is clearly carried. We move on to the Community Infrastructure Levy allocation and spend process. So Councillor Edivine, please, to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had the Community Infrastructure Levy, which I'll refer to as SIL, in force within the borough for just over 2 years now. And the recommendation that we're being asked to approve tonight has been firstly through the Growth and Development Scrutiny Group, and secondly recently approved by Cabinet. Appendix A sets out the criteria for using the strategic SIL money and lists many of the projects that potentially could benefit from the SIL money in it. And it also shows ways in which the money can be spent across the borough and locally. Section 4.12 of the report sets out the process for the protocol of spending SIL funds. Possibly the most important thing in this, Madam Mayor, is that within the paper we've set out the extra money which we wish to provide for parishes and non-parished areas without a neighbourhood plan. Parishes with a neighbourhood plan are allowed 25% of SIL monies collected on developments within their parish. And this money can be used for local projects within the guidelines of the SIL protocol. By law, parishes or areas with no neighbourhood plan are only allowed to receive 15% of SIL monies for local infrastructure projects. And I think the wish of the scrutiny group and the cabinet was that we should level up those funds and provide an extra 10% of funds, a further 10% of funds to be made available to those parishes without a neighbourhood plan or non-parished areas. I think it must, however, be stressed, because there is a law surrounding this, that 10% will have strings attached to it, and there will be more structure about how it can be spent, and it can only be spent within the strategic elements of how the SIL is set out. But I do believe that it's a very important thing to do, and it gives local communities more say in how the extra money can be used in their own communities. In proposing the recommendation, I would like to stress to councillors, and I've had a number of comments from some councillors about making sure that the money is actually spent. And I would like to stress that it's our intention to help parish councils without neighbourhood plans to spend the extra money they have in a timely manner. And to this end, we'll be ensuring that correct training and advice will be given to make sure that monies can be allocated and spent. We will additionally be making recommendations to ensure that parishes are given appropriate information and advice with an information pack. And councillors themselves will be given training to help them advise their own parishes and communities. Clerks will be given appropriate training to advise their members, and will include regular sessions and updates on the SIL and in the town and parish forum. And finally, we will monitor the expenditure on an annual basis and encourage monies to be spent. I think the last thing that any of us want to see is the money being recalled to the borough after 5 years having sat in someone's bank account. And I believe that the actions that I've outlined, in addition to the recommendation, should make sure that this does not happen. So I therefore propose that we accept the recommendation set out in paragraph 2 on page 37 of our papers.
Thank you, Councillor Edvine. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second the recommendation and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the issues and confusion around SIL are only the beginning. The Labour Group would like to recognise the difficulty the officers have had to endure surrounding this process. It can't have been easy. We will obviously back anything that will see money going into the communities that are suffering under the brunt of such rampant house building. And we ask that they continue to be transparent and as helpful as towns, parishes and communities begin to navigate their way through this very complex process. I'm going to finish with a story of a resident of my ward. They're a couple who have a particularly tough year, and that is saying something this year. One of them is recovering from a life-threatening illness. They're unable to move into their new home in Reddington because of a seeming reluctance of the developers to release Section 106 money. That has been stipulated in the conditions, which means their completed house now sits empty. The point I'm making is that the inconsistencies of policy and the uncertainty of conditions lead to real life being impacted in the most disruptive way for our residents. So we very much welcome the progress this document symbolizes, but continue to object to the overly bureaucratic and complex nature of the process that could see communities not accessing the funds due to them. We do have a duty to bring clarity to the situation and not confusing, but we do back the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we'll be supporting the report and recommendations, although it is complicated. I take it that in the appendix, the worked examples are just examples, because I can think of one health provision at Gamston that needs some expansion. The only other point I would make is that in West Bridgford, of course, where there is no parish or town council, that the consultation should be as wide as possible with relevant community groups and community associations. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, welcome the report, and thank you to the officers for putting it together. The SIL has become a fearfully complex beast for us all to keep an eye on. Yes, it's good. I'm very pleased to hear Councillor Edevine's comments about the training and the information packs that will be provided for parish and town councils around the borough. And I'm assuming that will be extended to groups within West Bridgford. In particular, I hope there's a role for the West Bridgford Local Area Forum, which brings together community groups and residential groups and special interest groups from around the West Bridgford area. And of course, one councillor from the borough from each of the wards in West Bridgford sits on the local area forum as well. Interesting with the neighbourhood plan comment, we do have one community group within West Bridgford already, the Central West Bridgford Community Association, who are right now working on a neighbourhood plan. As Councillor Jones said, we don't have a town or a parish council of West Bridgford. We do have a lot of very, very active community groups who wish to participate in this process and hopefully avail themselves of some of the advantages of use of the SIL. So yes, happy to support this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rushcliff has been collecting SIL now for over 2 years, and as yet, not a brass farthing has been spent from the strategic SIL pot. The paper doesn't say what we will spend the money on. It describes the process that will be used to decide what we will spend the money on. A small step forward. Meanwhile, the fund is building up, and the single thing that concerns all our residents most about housing growth is the lack of infrastructure to support it. Developers are contributing significant amounts of funding towards infrastructure, and I hope we can all agree how important it is to move this money along the line as quickly and efficiently as possible. We thank the officers for all the work that they've done on the framework. The process for deciding which projects to support and for releasing funds is mostly sound. There is, however, one huge piece of nonsense in the framework. That is the provision for areas without a neighbourhood plan to be able to access an extra 10%, so that they supposedly benefit to the same extent as areas with a neighbourhood plan. The principle of equalising the amounts is not what I'm questioning. But because of the SIL regulations, there is very little flexibility in what this extra 10% can be spent on. The process officers have had to invent to allocate it adds an extra layer of complexity onto an already complicated process. It will soak up officer time and frustrate and confuse our parish councils. But the very worst thing is that it will tie the money up and slow down the spending of it even further. But we are where we are, and we need to get on with it. We welcome the assurances from Councillor Edivine about training and advice. The key things that we're urging are, firstly, about this extensive training advice and help made available to stakeholders, and that includes all of us as borough councillors. Secondly, the guidelines and training need to be clear and understandable. Drafts should come back to councillors for comment, perhaps through scrutiny. Thirdly, that a date is set for the infrastructure list to be reviewed and that councillors are involved in this. Fourthly, councillors are provided with regular reviews, at least annually, of funds spent and remaining. And finally, It will be down to all of us as ward members to thoroughly understand the process so that we can explain it to parishes and make sure that the funds relevant to our wards are actually spent and not simply banked by Rushcliff forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Just made it in the 3 minutes. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, as Vice Chairman of the Growth and Development Scrutiny Group, that where members worked very hard on this whole issue of SIL and S106, and I think we all agree that it is extremely complicated. It is, however, the law of the land, and we have to work with what we have. I'd like to assure Councillor Thomas and others we certainly don't do nonsense on that committee. It's all taken very seriously indeed, and as a result of the work of that committee of officers and members, we now have the recommendation before us, which obviously I'm very happy to support. The point's already been made about the importance of getting the message across and training to parish councils and indeed any other interested parties. I suspect as well that developers and applicants would benefit from training and advice as well. And I hope and also have confidence that this council will be able to put together various and appropriate types of training to ensure that all of us, and crucially the whole borough, gets its fair share and right allocation of SIL 106. And well, I was going to say I'll define anyone here now, but I won't do that. But I will say it anyway to try and explain the differences between 106 and SIL, because at the end of the day, it is very complicated. So really, Madam Mayor, a lot of work's gone into it. All members are naturally very interested, and we will watch with interest to see how it all progresses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Please don't offer to speak. Well, if you do, you've only got 3 minutes to explain. So, Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think 3 minutes will be okay for me. I speak as the chairman of the Radcliffe Parish Council when I led their neighbourhood plan, and I took great advice and thank Councillor Thomas because she was ahead of us in that respect. But there are probably, what, 5 or 6 neighbourhood plans within the borough at the moment. And they in themselves are quite complicated, believe me, on their rules and regulations, as are Section 106s and the Community Infrastructure Levy. And I recall about 2 years ago, I think it was about October in 2019, in this chamber, when I was the portfolio holder for planning, we adopted and SIL came into force. And I looked there and I paraphrased in that report when we said and agreed, when developing the SIL procedures, officers will also consider the potential to ensure that 25% of the SIL receipts can be made available across the borough, rather than just those areas with a neighbourhood plan. And as we've heard, the Growth and the Development Scrutiny Group has considered all that. I mean, it does take time. It's an incredibly complex area. So I don't criticise officers and that scrutiny group for taking 18 months to 2 years to come where we are now. But as I say, speaking from a neighbourhood plan point of view, as one of those in a ward that gets the 25%, I always felt that was inequitable. There's a lot of work, you need a lot of volunteers and a heck of a lot of time to do a neighbourhood plan. And not everybody, as I go around the borough, wants to go on that journey. I think it's unfair that they should be deprived, if you like, of the 25%. It's a complicated area, and a lot of people don't understand the difference between SIL and Section 106. I understand that. I think somewhere down the track, government is minded perhaps to look at merging the two together, and I think that'll be an interesting thing for the future. But we are where we are, as somebody's just said. I think it's a good move. It's a levelling up, to coin a current phrase. You know, that's what we need across the borough. I have every faith in the procedures and the details. There will be, no doubt, application forms and performers that parish councils can fill in and make sure this extra 10% is spent occasionally. So thank you, Madam Mayor. That's it.
I don't think there's anyone else who should speak. So Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of very quick points. I support everything Councillor said. I always thought 10% was 25p.
Is your microphone on, Councillor? Moore? Oh, yes, it is now, yes.
You can probably hear me anyway.
I can hear you, yes.
I'll shout it.
It's not just me.
Has the clock stopped? There you are. I always thought the difference was wrong, particularly over West Bridgeford. I just thought that was totally unfair and for small parish councils. So I support all of that. It is a slow process, and supporting Councillor Thomas, which I don't do very often, is that we need to get the money out. So we need to, all of us, vote for it tonight and get the thing moving so we can get it out. Now, going back to what Councillor Thomas has said, we don't sit on money. As of today, 6.3 million in 106 money has been either spent or allocated in Eastleigh. So I know Eastleigh's had the problems. I hear where you're coming from, but 6.3 million is the up-to-date figure I got today that's been moved either out of Rushcliff or allocated to particular sites. And one of them is a £2.5–3 million towards a new school. So we don't sit on the money. We will not sit on the money, and we need to move this one forward quickly. Thank you. Very happy to second it, and very happy to second the approve, whatever.
Thank you. Councillor Edivine, you have right of reply.
I think everyone said everything, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
In that case, we'll move to a vote. So all in favour, please show. I think that is unanimous. Thank you. So that is clearly carried. So now we come to item 11, the Gambling Act 2005, a draft statement of licensing principles 2022 to 2025. Councillor Inglis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So every 3 years, there's a statutory requirement under the Gambling Act of 2005, the borough's statement of licensing principles must be reviewed, and that's for any changes in legislation and to any advice from central government. The current statement of principles, which is version 7, was approved by full council in 2018. So a revised final document must be published by the 3rd of January 2022 to avoid any possible legal challenges or consequences. This draft document serves to outline how the borough will exercise their function over the next 3 years, and it has a duty to license premises where gambling takes place within the borough. It has now been updated with those changes to comply with the 3 licence objectives under Section 1 of the Gambling Act 2005. Essentially, they are preventing gambling from being a source of crime or disorder or being used to support crime, ensuring gambling is conducted in a fair and open way, and probably the most important one is protecting children and other vulnerable people from being harmed or exploited by gambling. In formulating the update, consultation has been sought from the various comprehensive bodies and organisations as listed in Appendix 1 of this report. The majority of the amendments to the current document are minor wording changes, as outlined in paragraph 9, the Appendix of Changes. I don't propose to go through all those little changes. However, there are 2 new paragraphs. Paragraph 3.7. That's adding a requirement for gambling establishments to assess their local ethnic breakdown in order to provide appropriate literature where English is not the primary language. And in paragraph 6.12, changes to B2 and B3 fixed odds betting terminal machines, and that's following national concerns to potential adverse impacts on vulnerable adults relating to the siting and staffing levels of these machines. The minimum bet before was £100, and that's gone down to 2. These machines can be highly addictive, and they have been referred to as the crack cocaine of gambling, because punters can use lots of money in a very short period of time. So I'm sure this is not a hard sell to get this approval, and it's odds on that everybody, as I do, agree that the changes to the statement of principles are necessary, and those amendments are key factors in promoting the 3 key licensing objectives. They also fulfil a corporate priority in the quality of life by ensuring the safety of our residents and supporting a commitment to the reduction of crime and disorder, a pledge we strive to achieve in making Rushcliff such a great place to live. I would therefore like to make the proposal as in item 8, and that all councillors endorse the recommendation by approving the statement of licensing principles for the period of 2022 to 2025. So please place your bets.
Thank you, Councillor Inglis. Councillor Williams to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This document came before the Licensing Committee on the 4th of November 2021. At this meeting, it was supported by all the members on the committee. A consultation was also carried out by the borough with relevant organisations. These were listed in the agenda item papers for this item, with only 3 out of the 20 coming back. As mentioned by Councillor Inglis, this document adheres to the free licensing objectives. The changes to the use of the fixed odds betting terminals and machines certainly reiterates the principles. The recent documentary on BBC One by the former footballer Paul Merson shows what an impact a gambling addiction can have on someone, and this document shows how the borough is safeguarding its residents. Safe in the knowledge that their gambling activities is done in a fair, open way without being exploited. By having the minimum bet reduced and the location of the machines so staff with adequate staffing levels can monitor their use, demonstrates again the commitment to these principles. This not only reduces the potential financial risk of placing a bet at one of these machines, but also makes sure that they are not open to abuse. With our ever-changing population of the borough, this document also makes sure that those without first language who might not always be English, adequate awareness documentation about gambling is made available to them. Again, protecting all our residents and making them fully informed. For these reasons, I will be seconding the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Walker, please.
Yeah, thank you. The Labour Group will be back in the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we fully support the changes and the revision to the document. On second reading, I did pick up a couple of queries, which I'm happy to share with Councillor Inglis later, because it talks about a local area profile of the area, and it also talks about alcohol licensing maps, as if they are somewhere else in the document. And there's something a bit unclear about that, but that's minor really compared with the main purpose. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we're happy to support the update to the licensing document. I think it's really useful. I think it's good that we all work together in Nottinghamshire as a whole across all the boroughs and districts to have the sort of harmonised rules with that. If I've got a concern about gambling at all, it's not so much about our document and where the machines are now, because I think our legislation, our local policy actually covers that. It's that, you know, we've all got phones, we've all got tablets, things like that. Kids go out and they download games, and very often to proceed in the game, there are adverts, and you have to click on the adverts. And quite often, those are adverts for gambling, online gambling machines. It's flashy, it's exciting. It's probably more exciting than a boring old machine in the corner of a pub or something like that. And I think if there is a danger with gambling at the moment, it's very much about online gambling. And that's something that I think that needs to be looked at on a national basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We support the recommendation.
Councillor Inglis, your right of reply, unless there's anyone else that I can't see. I don't know why. I seem to not be able to spot people today. Whether you can. So yeah, Councillor Inglis, right of reply, please.
No, I don't think there's anything else further to say, and I do support what Councillor Madden is saying with the online gambling and the adverts that do pop up. That's something we'll look at in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So all those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. That's that vote is carried. And now we come to item 12, the PSAA External Audit Contract 2023-24 Retender 2023-24 to 2027-28. So, Councillor Moore, I think you're, yes, it is working now, your microphone. I think it was just someone else had theirs on. Yeah.
Never mind, I'll just talk loud.
No, it's on, it's on, it's on.
Oh, you've got another one now, have we?
Well, it's confusing us now, but yeah.
No light on it.
Can that one working? Okay, right. This is what you've been waiting for, this item. This report is necessary to comply with the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014 to approve the use of public sector audit appointments to run the procurement process for the appointment of council's external auditors from 2023/4 to 2027/8. This is the same body that we're responsible for the procurement process for our current external auditors, Mazars. And this is the local authority throughout the country preferred route of using PSAA. Paragraph 4.3 highlights the key benefits going down this route. This is a technical point that needed to be brought to council. It needs full council approval under the Act, and I will be grateful for all your agreement to this part of the process and to support the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Verdi to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as Councillor Moore said, this is the item we've all been waiting for, so I'm not going to make you wait too much longer. But the audit market is particularly challenging at the moment, and irrespective of the method of audit procurement, real risks prevail in terms of the number and quality of auditors in the market. Like many sectors currently, labour supply is an issue. That said, this is the best value approach in terms of undertaking the procurement and ensuring that the highest quality audit firms are procured. For good governance, the highest professional standards must be maintained, and I would urge all members to support the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Verdi. Councillor Gray.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Moore for his introduction on this, and Councillor Verdi, and also for the officers their work put on. I have to say I'm disappointed, for one, that the length of speeches tonight has been limited. I have a lot to say about, not necessarily relevant to this report or the recommendation actually, but focused almost entirely on my family's recent trip to Peppa Pig World. However, with the time limits in mind, you'll be glad to hear that I'll skip the waffle and just say the Labour Group supports the recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, our group supports it as well as Peppa Pig.
And Councillor Mallender.
Yes, happy to support as well.
And Councillor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unlikely though it may seem that I will agree with Councillor Moore on anything, we do support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Moore, right of reply. Thank you. So all in favour, please show. That's unanimous, so that vote is carried. And now we come to the Bingham Improvement Board. Councillor Robinson to move, please.
Sorry, the people need to leave.
Oh, sorry, yes, I think they already are. Thank you.
Members will recall back in full council in September, we had a petition presented to this council following a lot of issues and challenges at Bingham Town Council. Unfortunately, under legislation, we were not allowed to execute the recommendations of that petition, but I did actually change the recommendation in the paper to recommend an improvement board, very much on the lines that we've seen at Nottingham City Council as well. And following the actions after that was agreed at full council, the Chief Executive and myself met the Mayor of Bingham, along with the clerk there, to agree terms of reference for this improvement board. Consequently, there was a meeting on the 23rd of November where Bingham Town Council actually approved the terms of reference and put nominations forward for the improvement board. I'm absolutely delighted to bring to you tonight that we've managed to recruit 3 very, very highly talented and professional and highly skilled people to serve on that board. Neil Taylor, who's the ex-Chief Executive of Bassett Law, who will chair it, along with Jonathan Owen, who's the Chief Executive of NALC, which is the National Association of Local Councils, and thirdly, David Pye, who represents the LGA, who's also a parish councillor. Bingham Town Council have also nominated 2 members to go on to this improvement board, Councillor Williams and the other councillor who's been nominated there is Councillor Bird. So it is now going to be a team of 5 to actually take that forward. The terms of reference are there in Appendix 1. We think that they really sum up the tasks ahead and what's important and the focus that this board needs now to make the impact on Bingham Town Council. There is a budget of £10,000 to support the work of the improvement board, which will be shared 50-50 across the borough and with Bingham Town Council. So I'd like to stress, members, this has been through full council in September, which you supported. It's also been through Bingham Town Council, their cross-party, and supported on the 23rd of November. We're very, very confident that this improvement board has the skills, has the experience to address these very significant issues at Bingham, and that we will see huge improvement as we go forward. So I'd like to move those recommendations that are set out on page 99, section 2, and that's noting that to update the cabinet next summer and to welcome the progress that's been made on the improvement board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Eddybean to second, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second the recommendation. Clearly, at the last meeting of the council, it did have cross-party support. I'm not going to say any more. I'll reserve the right to speak just in case we find it hasn't got cross-party support.
Thank you, Councillor Eddybean. Councillor Gaunt, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to say on behalf of the Labour Group that we're very pleased to see the progress towards formation of this improvement board. Hopefully this can draw a line under the dreadful behaviour and culture of bullying that has occurred in Bingham over such a long period of time. And we fully support the recommendation. I would like to point out, if I can, that there seems to be a slightly missed opportunity here with the appointment of what seems to be an entirely male board. In the spirit of creating a more balanced and inclusive council, it might have been more prudent for Bingham maybe to have selected 2 of their brilliant female councillors to the board instead. This is in no way an attempt to tell Bingham what to do, of course, and it's not a negative point made in any way against any of the highly experienced members that have been selected. It just might have been something to bear in mind for the future. And if there ever is a chance to reselect in the future, it might be good to think about selecting female members. Also, and I know this will not go down well with some of the folk opposite, but I do feel it's another missed opportunity to see the use of the term chairman. As the husband of a brilliant wife and the father of an amazing daughter, I find it baffling that we still use these archaic terms. I'm fully aware of the argument that was made by Councillor Clark that he is not a chair. I'm aware of that, but he is a man, and equally there are some very talented women who are not men. Also, when I last checked, none of our cabinet opposite were kitchen storage units. So please let's move on from that silly argument. If there is anything that can encourage more talented females to standing as representatives of their committees, then it should be encouraged, of their community, sorry. And the language used around the roles of responsibility could easily be seen as discouraging. So in the interest of encouraging Bingham to move forward in a more progressive path for the future, I would hope that they might discuss changing that title as soon as possible from chairman to chair. So apart from that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gaunt. Councillor Jones. Oh, sorry.
There we go. So the Liberal Democrat Group would like to concur with the views already expressed. We're happy that progress is being made, and we hope that this will result in a more harmonious town council, which will hopefully be better equipped to serve the needs of its community. And we'd also like to thank those that originally did bring forward the original position for highlighting the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howitt. Councillor Mallender, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this has been a very vexed issue over quite a long time, and it's very useful, very good to see that Bingham is actually moving along that journey to improvement. I welcome the involvement of NALC in this. I think that will be very useful. I hope that will be very useful. And I look forward to visiting Bingham and seeing how they're all getting on in a few months' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. The only person under 80 to use the word vexed. Councillor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We note the report, thank the officers for their work on this and hope that this is a productive process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Does anyone else wish to speak? Can't see anyone. Councillor Edivine, you reserved your right to speak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased by all the comments, but I would like to say that, of course we support inclusivity, and I find words semantics. It really is. We're here to support the Bingham Improvement Board, and what we want to do is make sure that that is the best board that we can put together with the right experience. It is a shame that there may not be any women on it, but I'd like to see that in the future as well. And I certainly look forward to the reports of the Improvement Board coming back to Cabinet. That's as much as I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Robinson, right of reply.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, members, for your support. Just picking up Councillor Gordon, if he hasn't read the report, substitutes who are actually in that report are actually female. He didn't mention that in his report. I'm not going to make any comment about the chairperson. That's not for this meeting. Also, just for Councillor Gordon, that the monitoring officer who's supporting there, as you see, was female, as also is the clerk at Bingham Town Council supporting it female as well. So I think comments about diversity are very, very misplaced in terms of this board. It's focused. It's professional, it's there to do a job, and I hope that this group will back it, and I'll look forward to the Improvement Board, the feedback coming back and taking it to Cabinet next summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. So we'll move to a vote. All in favour, please show. I think that is unanimous. Thank you. So that vote is carried. Now we come to the committee's membership update. Oh yes, we'll just wait for the people to come back. Thank you. The committee's membership update, Councillor Robinson to move, please.
This is an administrative item. There are actually two strands to it. The first is to do with the changes in political representation on this council. So as you will see in the committees, it reflects that representation. I won't go through every committee. It's there in your report and you can see that reflection. Secondly is the working group to look at crematorium. I put this forward because I think it's very successful the way this has worked in the past. The arena, as we know, the Bingham also has a working group around. I think it's very important that members across party should be reviewing these major capital projects. So it seems apt that we do change now the Bingham working group, which is looking at the Chapel Lane development, to incorporate the crematorium. Crematorium is a very key and strategic development for this authority. It's beginning construction, in fact, this month. So the new working group will be named the Bingham the Chapel Lane working group and the crematorium working group there as well. So as I say, I think that's really important that members have that overview of these major projects and have their input into that. So I'd also, just on the recommendations, delegate authority to the monitoring officer just to change the terms of reference to that working group. So I'd like to move the recommendations on page 107, item 2, A and B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Edivine to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Robinson says, it is very much an administrative thing. It does, of course, give an opportunity for our newest elected member to join the committee and contribute to the council. We look forward to that, and I'd like to second the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Edivine. Councillor Walker.
Yes, the Labour Group is going to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Well, it is coming up to Christmas. Yeah, thank you. We'll be supporting the report.
Thank you. Councillor Malander.
Yes, supporting as well.
And Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I note that the current group for the Bingham Leisure Centre does contain a Copgrave councillor, which I feel will be important for the crematorium, and we support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Can't see anyone. Councillor Robinson, right of reply. All in favour of item 14 then please show. That's also unanimous. Thank you, that's clearly carried. So now we come to the motions, the notices of motion. There are two. So the first one is going to be put to council by Councillor R. Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Up at the north end of the county, there's been a reintroduction to some residents that we've not had in Nottinghamshire for over 400 years. They're about that big, and they're like chewing wood. I think we know what we're talking about. The beavers. The beavers have been reintroduced to Nottinghamshire. That's fantastic. It's also happening in other parts of the UK. It's also happening across the whole of Europe as well. It's fantastic when we can reintroduce to the ecosystems that we all inhabit, that we are part of, a part of that ecosystem that's vanished, been taken out by our own hands, by our ancestors' hands, hundreds of years ago. And we all welcome that. It's a fantastic thing. There are some species that we can never bring back. Some people would be in favour of bringing back lynx, wolves, bison. I can understand why people have reservations about that. There are parts of the world where it would make sense to bring back animals that have become recently extinct. Up at Woolerton Hall, there's a skeleton of a T-Rex, rather longer term extinct. As a species, we have not been around for all that long. And yet we have, in our time, created tremendous changes on the planet as a whole. And what we need to do, and increasingly we are doing, is recognizing those changes. Some of those changes have benefited us tremendously. As a species, there are billions of us on the planet now. There has not been dominance in sheer numeric terms by one species the way we dominate the planet since the Permian period, about 300, 500 million years ago. Look it up. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to look after this planet. We share it with other creatures. And as part of that, we have recognized that our impact of our industry, of what we do, of how we live our lives, has created a climate emergency. There is a flip side to that, and that's an ecological emergency. It's about how we have taken so much from nature, and we have to give something back. I was talking to Councillor Upton, I've talked to other councillors here earlier about trees, about hedgehogs, about making sure that we can help restore those little parts of our wildlife, of our ecosystems that we all depend on. And I think it behoves us to go further. Now, we've declared a climate emergency in this council. We've put in place budget, we've put in place measures to deal with aspects of the climate emergency. And I feel that we should also go ahead with this ecological emergency, and we should look at opportunities for increasing and enhancing biodiversity across our borough. There is a duty, I believe, under the UK government's Environment Act to maintain, as local authorities, a nature recovery strategy. Now, I know that there are many developments going across the borough at the moment, and over the next few years, where we'll be expecting developers to enhance the biodiversity of the areas that they're building new houses on for our residents. That's fantastic. But I think that we as a borough council should go further, and we should be looking at how our activities, how what we do also is influencing and disrupting the biodiversity of nature in our borough. And we should look at ways of enhancing that, building that, bringing back that beauty of nature that we all depend on, that creates the world we live in. So I would ask you to support this motion so that we can move forward and take this forward to our scrutiny groups, bring back a report and see how we can best benefit the whole of the nature within our borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Gowland.
Second this motion, reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I agree with you. I agree with just about everything that you've said. Our natural environment is not in the state it should be. The pressures of climate change, intensive agriculture, the unsustainable use of resources, and the continuous pressure from development are causing an ecological emergency. Nature and climate are interconnected. Those same habitats that host our precious wildlife are also part of the solution to climate change. When our natural systems are working well, we all benefit from cleaner air, cleaner water, healthy soils, more nutritious foods. And by making these connections, we understand that there is one combined crisis to address. The loss of green space means animals, birds and insects are suffering. One small example, you talked about the beavers recently. Recent statistics that came out from the RSPB and others show that climate change, hedge grubbing, modern farming practices and large-scale development has resulted in 70% of small mammals suffering a decline and farmland bird numbers in England having halved since the 1970s. And this really brought it home to me because I reflected on the fact that when I used to drive home in the summer across Lincolnshire some 30 odd years ago, I would drive through swarms of insects so dense that sometimes you couldn't see through the windscreen. Nowadays, barely a midge hits the windscreen on my drive through Lincolnshire. So we can all see those impacts around us. However, I do believe we've already made our commitment to addressing this clear in our climate emergency motion adopted in 2019 and in the Rushcliff Nature Conservation Strategy, which was adopted by the Cabinet in February this year and which went through scrutiny committee, which I believe that you sit on, Councillor Mallender. And in that we quote the UN. We say we are in a state of planetary emergency. The interdependent crises of biodiversity loss, ecosystem degradation and climate change, all of those things. And in that strategy, we also quote the Chartered Institute for Ecology and Environmental Management that says climate emergency and biodiversity crises are inextricably linked and must be addressed together. So in adopting that strategy, Council has already recognised this, and it clearly sets out how we'll work with our partners to deliver a comprehensive action plan. So we support the ambition of the motion, but essentially believe we're already doing it and we've already articulated our commitment to carry on doing so. The motion does not propose a new policy direction or bring forward any new action, so we won't be supporting it this evening. But I can see merit in declaring more overtly, publicly, that we recognise that alongside the climate emergency, there exists an ecological emergency, and that our strategies for carbon reduction and nature conservation support both of these interlinked crises. Our climate change strategy is due to go to Cabinet this month, and it clearly sets this out. But we'll, am I on time? Yeah. Over time. Yes. We will emphasise that. We'll come up front with a recognition of the ecological emergency alongside our commitment to carbon reduction. And we will also ask the relevant scrutiny committee to look at these action plans next year to ensure that they are delivering a clear, ambitious action plan. Thank you. Apologies.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Walker, please.
Have I pressed the wrong thing now? Can you hear me?
Fine.
It's showing something weird on the screen. Yeah, no, the Labour Group will be backing this motion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Madam Mayor, I'm fully aware that we've got a nature conservation strategy, and as Councillor Brennan has said, there's overlaps and it is part of climate change emergency. However, conservation strategy is all fine words, but it is action that matters. And that's why we'll be supporting the motion, because we think it needs a greater impetus. And as the leader is more than aware, there are many developers who ignore all our fine words. And unless action is taken on many of these fronts to preserve habitats and protect wildlife, these words mean little. We know at Sharp Hill that they're building closer to the wood than they were supposed to. They're not planting and growing what they should be. They've covered half the community park with 3 meters of clay. They've not created a wildlife corridor. All parts of the conditions and the plans. And where are we? Now, hopefully there is a meeting coming up on that, but it's just one instance, I fear, of many where developers will say all the fine words, have all the nice plans, they'll all be written off in planning committee, and nature will suffer. Not just because of the building, but because of the lack of regard to the environment that the building is going into. So my plea is for action more than the words. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Shaw will respond for us.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They paved Paradise and put up a parking lot. Famous lyrics written in January 1970 by a country artist by the name of Jodie Mitchell when she was on a brief visit to Hawaii. That song was Big Yellow Taxi, which has become recognised as an ecological anthem. Since then, it's been recorded by over 500 other artists, the latest being just last year. For those of you that don't know the song, and I'm sure there's not many of you around here in here that don't know the song, but one of the other lyrics says, farmers, give up your DDTs, give me spots on my apples, but leave me the birds and bees. The sad thing is about this is that very little has changed in the last 50 years since the song was written. You say that you've already got a policy, but we are still digging up green fields to build car parks. And we've done that twice in East League. So I know we're just as bad. Never seem to give any thought to wildlife corridors when planning large developments. And nowhere near enough thought is given to ecosystems when considering planning applications. We as a group are therefore very happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Anyone else wish to speak? Sorry, Councillor Robinson.
Just a couple of comments. Just address Councillor Jones. He's absolutely right about Sharp Hill, which I've called this meeting on Monday. But actually, this motion would not address that at all. What you are talking about is planning enforcement, and I absolutely agree, and officers agree as well, that we do not enforce it enough. This is not about enforcement. This is about 5 things there, which are statements. The actions aren't there. And as Councillor Brennan says, what we have at the moment, we have the framework to go forward, and we must go right across all our services. And planning is very important, as has just been mentioned there as well, about planning development. Yeah, we have to make sure in the requirements, when developers go in there, that it is actually enforced. And it's actually incorrect to say that we do not have requirements, because every site does have very strong biodiversity requirements, whether it's replacements of trees, whether it's preservation of certain areas of that. But I keep going back to, we absolutely agree with Councillor Mallender. You know, we've spoken before. I saved some trees in this very room a few weeks ago. Passionately talked about it. That's absolutely right. It's very small, but all these small things make a big difference. But what I don't want to do is just pile on lots of different policies. It's all about the action. It's about making it work. As Councillor Brennan says, we have those structures right now, and they've absolutely made sure they've got to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Anyone else? Councillor Gowland, you reserved your right to speak.
Thanks very much. So I think we're all in agreement. We've got a problem. I had the same example of driving through the countryside and just not, I mean, it's terrifying, not getting your windscreen covered in insects. It's about the little things. It's not about beavers. It is about beavers, but in the hedgehogs, but it's about insects and microbes, all these things. The reason why we need to declare an ecological emergency as well as a climate emergency is because we're all aware of the problem of unintended consequences. We all understand that probably covering fields with solar panels is not an ideal solution to the climate emergency. We've got a lot of big sheds, that's where they should be. We need to have both of these issues up in the fore. And as you said, we need to stand up and recognise publicly as a council that there is an ecological emergency. And that's the first thing this motion says. We recognise there's an ecological emergency. We all do, we understand it. And I think it does highlight specific actions. You know, clearly there are specific actions on that list. So I commend this motion and I ask you to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. Councillor Mallender to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, everybody, particularly those who've spoken on this. I think I recognise the points that are being made by Councillor Brennan and by Councillor Robinson as well. And, you know, I have to say, I think this council is going further than a lot of councils on its response to climate change. And I welcome that, I genuinely do. I feel that this would be adding extra weight to that, giving an extra emphasis, and producing a particular report to the community scrutiny group. Now, if that's going to go back and this doesn't get through, then absolutely we'll be continuing to work to do to press through this through scrutiny. Seeing nodding heads, I totally welcome that. I would ask you to back the motion. I think it's a useful aid to the fight that we have to bring to deal with climate change and with ecological change. And I would commend you to vote for it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. So we'll now go to the vote on the motion. So all in favour, please show. Thank you. And all those against? So that motion is lost. So now we come to the notice of the motion to be put to council by Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion is about inclusivity. It's about strengthening the involvement in the life of the community of the age group who so often feel powerless. Young people know, perhaps more starkly than we do, that the world as they and we know it is coming to an end, and it is up to us all how it ends and what will come after. After we are gone, young people will inherit more extreme weather, more decimated wildlife, and more people fleeing arid regions of the world for a life in Europe. More young people than adults are aware that as consumers, we act as locusts on the resources of the earth. Many residents continue to act as if there is no threat, believing that individually we're insignificant. No one is doing anything about it, and it doesn't matter what I do. A substantial number see no need to change their lifestyle and await a lead from central government. Levelling up. As a council, we strive for change and wider engagement in the life of Rushcliff. There is hope. Solar and wind power and batteries and hydrogen are suddenly part of the future on a scale previously unimaginable. Walking and cycling is increasing as our measures to promote them, though not investment in public transport. Beyond all this, our young people could have a brighter future if they can help mould behaviour and choices. So the aim in this motion is to engage young people in carbon reduction and other action to reduce the climate change. Harnessing the enthusiasm, convictions and investment in the future of young people is of special importance. Important for their future, important for young people who can add to the awareness of our communities if given a platform to do so. Young people feeding into the local scene provide an important layer in the awareness of our communities. It increases the chance
where rare responses to the climate emergency reach a tipping point and become the norm. Citizens massed together have the power to make changes because individual choices can scale up. This proposal, its title and its modus operandi requires working up. Consultation and consideration by the Community Scrutiny Group. The proposal is for a very focused youth council, hopefully constructed using a range of representatives from each secondary school age range, enabling an ongoing continuity of focus. Of course, we have young ambassadors from year 10 from each secondary school. The County Council's youth service have a youth council or youth voice for each borough, which is much broader and young people move on. So currently there are 3 members of it in Rushcliff. So connections and cooperation with these organisations is important, but for this proposed group on action on climate change, a cross-section of ages will increase the chance of something ongoing. I believe that the time to provide an ongoing platform for sufficient representatives from secondary schools on action on climate change is now, and such a Rushcliff initiative would be a great achievement. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Howard, please.
As the youngest member of this council, I'd like to second this motion. A youth council with a specific focus on climate change would be a fantastic way to engage young people in their community on issues which will ultimately impact them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Any discussion, please? Councillor Jonathan Wheeler is speaking on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Jones for raising an important topic of youth engagement here tonight. It's really important that we engage with our young people to ensure they have a voice in shaping these council's priorities. We actually believe this motion is too narrow in its focus, and what we'd actually like to see is young people having an input into all our service areas and all our policies, including the leisure strategy, just to give one example. We would therefore like scrutiny to consider a matrix item that we'll be bringing forwards to have a Rushcliff Youth Council covering a much wider range, including the important subjects of climate change. This will allow us as a council to benefit from the unique and often straight-talking views of our young people and to allow them to feel part of shaping this council going forwards. We will therefore put together this item and it'll be obviously considered by the corporate overview group as per the scrutiny procedures, and then subject to their approval, go to the community scrutiny group, which I am chairman of. Our proposal is therefore different to the motion, and so we obviously formally have to vote against that this evening. However, as I've set out, we'll be expanding upon the aims of the motion, and myself and Councillor Brennan as the lead cabinet member will welcome Councillor Jones and any members input into their report, and of course members will be reviewing that through the scrutiny process. This council has a strong track record of supporting our young people, with examples including Positive Futures and the Young Project, which Councillor Jones has mentioned, and establishing this youth council is a positive next step. I very much hope that this report comes to the scrutiny group as soon as possible and we can get moving with this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I believe you wish to speak, Councillor Combeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I speak as the chairman of the Corporate Overview Scrutiny Group and Neville Ward Langer councillor. I very much understand the sentiment behind this motion, welcoming the views of young people who are the future. However, there are mechanisms already in place for considering such proposals. It cannot be accepted in this form. It undermines the whole scrutiny procedure. I would respectfully suggest Councillor Jones works with Councillor Wheeler to prepare the proposal and completes the necessary matrix to present to the Corporate Overview Scrutiny Group for consideration. I will ensure it is scheduled in our work programme. I cannot therefore, Madam Mayor, support this current motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, please.
The Labour Group very much welcomes and would encourage bringing in young people closer to our local government functions, but mostly we back it because it can remind us all of the impacts of our decisions we make in this room. And very much endorse the motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mullender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. completely agree with everything Rod's been saying about this on the motion. I think it's a really, really good idea. I also completely agree with Councillor Jonathan Wheeler as well. Anybody else? While I'm in a good mood, it's Christmas bon on me. You never know your luck. That could be a better phrase, couldn't it? So yes, I think it's really good. I did wonder if this might have been amended in order to take it to community security group, but so I will support the motion. If it goes through, that's fantastic. If it doesn't go through, then I look forward to this coming forward to community security group in the not too distant future. Overview scrutiny group permitting.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Thomas, please.
Councillor Way will respond, thank you.
Councillor Way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We support this motion. However, we'd like to see it go a little further. We'd like to see local areas set up youth groups which will suggest ways of tackling the issues within their communities, including climate change. These local councils then can feed into the Rushcliff Youth Council for Action on Climate Change. There've been many expressions of we already have this mechanism for this, that and the other this evening, but sometimes it's hard to see those mechanisms actually taking place. We feel that even younger children could be involved in this. Climate change is a hot topic in primary schools, and these young children will be adults by the time many of the current aspirations are expected to come to fruition. They are the future and their views are important so that we leave the world a better place for them. Councillor Wheeler mentioned that children can be quite clear and in their understanding of these issues. They can be innovative and they see things much more clearly than adults. And following on from our opening talk this evening, maybe we're clouded by too many neurons rushing around and we don't see things as clearly as children do who see them in a very straightforward way. In Eastleigh, we're already proposing and working towards a youth council to include people not just from the secondary schools, but uniformed organisations, primary schools, other groups and individuals who are interested. We hope that parish and borough councillors of any party and none will support this motion and the future for our young citizens. If you reject this motion, it will send a strong message to the young people of Rushcliff that the council doesn't consider it important to listen to the views of our young citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Way. Is there anyone else wishes to speak? Councillor Gowland, please.
Thank you. I understand that probably in the intricate workings of the council, this is going to be achieved anyhow. But I think the point of these motions is it says this council commits to establishing a youth council. I think for young people who might read this tomorrow on the internet, if you vote for it, imagine the excitement it might create amongst the schools and in the areas, you know, finding it's gone through scrutiny committee and it comes out sometime in the future. I don't think it has the impact that this motion would have.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. Okay. Third. Councillor Price, sorry. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just to add to Councillor Gowland's point, evidence suggests that young people are generally more engaged with single issue politics, and climate anxiety is a defining issue for this generation. A survey reported in the journal Nature in September of this year asked 10,000 young people in 10 countries how they felt about climate change and government responses to it. The results found that most respondents were concerned about climate change, with nearly 60% saying they felt very worried or extremely worried. Many associated negative emotions with climate change. The most commonly used were sad, afraid, anxious, angry, powerless. Overall, 45% of participants said that their feelings about climate change impacted their daily lives. This is an issue that impacts our young people deeply. They want to see action, and a forum specifically targeting action on climate change will give them a mechanism to influence and enact change.
Councillor Gaunt, please.
Sorry, yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to point out what Councillor Gowland said, well, in fact, what all the councillors on this side have said, and it's brilliant, obviously, that this will come to scrutiny. Fantastic as a different thing.
But it's not just that children would hear how good it would be if we declared this. I worry, and what's making me feel a bit sick now, is that we've just voted against something already that declares an ecological crisis or emergency. And although the intricacies are, I know what you said, but they won't see that, they won't hear that. And now we're about to vote against something that's implementing councils for young people on the ecological issues. It just, I just think despair. If I was a young teenager now, what I would think if the council voted against both those things on one night. I just find that baffling. It's not asking us to do much. I understand that you'll take it further. This is like Councillor Dowland says, it gives strength to that and just declares something, doesn't it? It makes a statement now. I don't see why we wouldn't do it, and I'm feeling a bit, well, more than a bit disappointed from tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gaunt. No one else? Oh, Councillor Robinson, please.
Sorry, just to address what you're saying, we all agree that youth needs a voice. This is about how to get it done quickly enough. And I hear your comments about it. And what we're going to say is we're going to put some press behind this. So young people are going to get the message because they're not interested in motions, to be honest. No one's sitting at home saying, what motion has Rushcliff passed? What they're interested in is what we do. So what we'll say, going in the new year, we have things like Rushcliff reports. It will actually be in there. We've got the web. It will be in there in the next few days. So let's not go on this route that, oh, they won't now. They're going to be disappointed with this. They're going to get the right message. And the other message that this group has put forward, we're going to give them a bigger voice. This motion is far too narrow. It's climate change. There's lots of things around there they want a voice on as well, like the environment, like leisure, and well-being as well. And we, as a group, want to give them that voice, where unfortunately, this motion, while well-being, is far too narrow, because actually what it says, what the council's got to do there is just talk about climate change. The youth I talk to want a much bigger voice, and that's what this group is going to put forward. It's going to put the press behind it. It's going to communicate with people. So in contrary to what you say, I think they're going to be absolutely delighted what this council is doing, and building on the great success we have things like the Young Project, and we have a great record in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Anyone else? Councillor Jones, right of reply.
Yeah, I just remind the Conservative group that many people are single issue. That's why some people struggle to get people who stand for councils and parish councils. Many adults are single issue concerns, and climate change and its associated environmental impacts are key to most young people. And whatever you might say about putting things in Rushcliff reports, what we've heard is it's got to go through the matrix, through one scrutiny group to another scrutiny group. That does not sound like action.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. So we'll now go to a vote on the motion. All those in favour, please show. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And all those against? Okay, thank you. I declare that that motion is lost. So now we come to item 16, questions from councillors. To answer questions submitted by councillors under standing order number 11.2. It's Councillor Gowland, please, to put the question to Councillor Brennan.
Thanks. Now this basically comes from a resident. As part of the COVID-19 recovery plan, have Parkwood reduce the available time for weekends for families to swim at the arena?
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I realise we've got mince pies waiting, but I do have a full answer for you that I'd like to give you. So we're all aware that the pandemic's had a significant impact on the whole leisure industry. Parkwood has put together a balanced plan, which has seen the numbers to the arena recover pretty well compared to the recent couple of years. However, the key issue is public safety, and that remains paramount. And this does look different now than it did pre-COVID. Parkwood, for example, are maintaining the 45-minute swim session across the programme to enable thorough cleaning between sessions. And the public swim sessions remain pre-book only to avoid queuing and to avoid the disappointment of being turned away if we're at capacity when you get to the front of the queue. There are currently 3 public swimming sessions on Saturday and 1 on a Sunday, and that current programme is based on feedback from users, and it's clear there has been some change in the demand from users post-COVID or since the COVID closures. For example, there's a high demand for single lane swimming, which I think is probably understandable, and there's also an increased demand for children's swim lessons because many kids missed out when the leisure centre was closed during the pandemic. The weekend morning availability for public swimming is also restricted by the protected bookings for the Rushcliff Swim Club. And when alternative public swimming sessions were offered in the early evening, there was very little take up of those. So across the week, there are currently 13 public swimming sessions available at the arena and more are put on during the holiday periods. Parkwood are working hard to ensure there is a balanced offering, but by necessity, there has had to be some changes. This has meant there has been some reduction in availability. So by necessity, so the answer to your question is yes, but this has been deemed to be necessary by Parkwood and reflects the demand of the majority of customers that have given feedback. So the overall programme is kept constantly under review and it will be adapted to meet sustainable customer demands. And there are already plans to reintroduce more family sessions at the weekend from January.
Do you have a supplementary question? No. So that concludes the business for this evening, and thank you very much for attending. I'd like you to